everyone and welcome. Today I'm making my version of this popular Filipino recipe called Pancit. These are noodles, it's made with pork, it's delicious, so let's get started. For this recipe you're going to need Filipino style noodles, which are cornstarch noodles, and make sure it says the word Bihon. As you can see, even in this package it says Filipino because this is a Filipino recipe. You're going to need around 16 ounces. For veggies you're going to need half a cabbage, 2 carrots, half a red onion, or you can use regular onion, green onions, small piece of ginger, 1 tablespoon of minced garlic. I'm not using fresh, I'm using minced garlic with chili peppers combined, and 32 ounces of chicken broth. I'm using bone broth. And for seasoning, I'm not using salt, but I'm using a little bit more chicken bouillon, and I'm using a tablespoon for each one, tablespoon of soy sauce, and tablespoon of oyster sauce. I'm using 1 pound of ground pork. You can use shrimp or chicken as well. The first step is to chop our veggies. We're gonna start by thinly slicing the cabbage, or just cut it in small pieces, as small as you can. We're gonna use the whole cabbage, the whole half. As you can see, it's kind of like strips. We want this cuts because we're gonna do the same with the carrots. You're gonna put it aside. Make sure that you rinse it after you cut it like this, because cabbage is not clean when you buy it from the store. So just like lettuce, you rinse it after you cut it. We're going to cut the carrot in julienne style pieces, so which are really thin strips. We're gonna start. As thin as you can. You don't have to be super thin because they're gonna be cooked. Once you cut the carrots like this, then it's just to put it in small strips. The goal is to get them like more or less like this size. They don't have to be perfectly thin or thick, as long as it's around the same size like this. Our carrot is thinly sliced in strips like this. They don't have to be super thin. There's a variety in here, whichever works for you. If you don't like cutting it like this, you can cut it a different way for your recipe. Now we're gonna cut the onion. The onion's gonna be similar and not strips, but it's gonna be in slices too. It's not gonna be like completely small pieces. Try to make them thin. If you don't like onion too much, you can make them smaller or whichever size you prefer, but this is, for this recipe, is to have it more or less like this. You can do them in half, like this. And put it aside, because they're gonna cook almost caramelized completely. And for the green onion, we're gonna use the main darker green for garnish. The rest of it, I'm gonna use it for sauteing it with the meat. So we're gonna start the one that's gonna go for garnishing. There, the rest we're going to use it for whenever we cook the meat. And this one I'm gonna separate it right here for garnish. And definitely this one is gonna be mixed and cooked with for the meat. Make sure this one you cut it into smaller pieces, so you don't want big pieces whenever you're sauteing the meat. More or less like this. Let's set it aside. And the last thing is the ginger. The easiest way to get rid of the skin of the ginger is with a spoon. You make sure you get rid of just the skin and use most of the ginger. That way you don't waste any ginger. Ginger is great for cooking with pork, adds lots of flavor for broths. I know it's easier on a bigger piece. I'm cutting on my tiny piece, but you can skim this the skin of the ginger with a spoon before you cut it, if you wanna, you know, just get rid of it altogether at the beginning, depending how much you use. Even it's great for the crevices. I'm grating the ginger. You can finely chop it whichever you prefer, but grating it is the fastest one. I know it releases more of the ginger flavor, and that's great. I love ginger. It's healthy and it goes great in the different meats. And just minced it. Ginger has a little bit like strands, so if you want to cut them even more, you can, but like that is good because they all separate when you cook them with something else. We're done prepping our veggies. Now for the prepping of the noodles, make sure that you wash before you cook them. And that means just rinsing the noodles in cold water. Doesn't mean soaking them because they're gonna cook completely whenever we use the broth. For this recipe, I'm using a wok. If you don't have a wok at home, you can use any large pan. So make sure you start by heating up your wok. Make sure it's nice and heated up before we start sauteing our veggies first. Okay, I'm gonna keep it at medium heat, using plenty of oil. I'm gonna start with the onions and the carrots, and then the last is gonna be the cabbage because that one takes less time to cook. Once the onions start changing color, I'm going to add the carrots and I'm going to saute them together, and then lastly the cabbage. Love the smell of sauteed onions. It's delicious. No matter if it's red onion or yellow or white onion, it's the best smell. Especially later on if you combine it with garlic or other flavors. Keep it on medium heat, adding the carrots. Now it's time to add the cabbage. The carrot, we don't want to overcook the carrot or any of our veggies until they get soft. That's when it's time to remove them from the heat because they're going to cook a little bit more whenever we add the noodles and everything combined. We don't want them super overcooked. Just a little bit more because the cabbage cooks faster. And then we're gonna take them out when we cook our meat. Okay, the veggies are ready because look, they look softened, the cabbage is softened, so it's time to lower the heat before so I can take them out and put them aside. Make sure you take everything out because now it's time to cook the pork. Now we're gonna add a little bit more oil and it's time to cook the pork. I raised the heat again to medium heat. I'm gonna start with sauteing the garlic, the ginger, and the green onions before I add the meat. And let's add around 1 tablespoon. Saute them until they release the smell, the flavors. You can smell that deliciousness of the garlic with the green onions and the ginger. I'm adding a little bit more oil before I add the meat, just to make sure. The meat has a lot of fat in it because that's the best one for stir fries like this. So make sure that you get one that is not too lean for pork, but it's preference too. If you prefer one that is more on the leaner side, go ahead. I'm gonna add a little bit of pepper on the meat because I love pepper. You don't have to add pepper, it's optional, but for mine I am. But I just love pepper. Goes great with pork. The pork is completely cooked. Now I just raise the heat because we want to brown it a little bit before we take it out and we start cooking the noodles. Yeah, the pork is browning already. We're ready to take it out and we're gonna boil our broth. This is cooked. It has some little bit of browning. You can always leave it longer if you prefer more brown. It depends on your preference of the cooked meat. I still have it on high heat. I took out the meat. Now it's time to pour the whole broth. So make sure you pour the whole thing. No need to wash the wok because this is where all the flavors are. We're gonna bring it to a boil, and you can do it before or after. We're adding our soy sauce and oyster sauce as well as the tablespoon of chicken bouillon. You can add more or less of the soy sauce, it's up to you. Oyster sauce, they sell at any Asian supermarket. And chicken bouillon, more or less a tablespoon. You can use more as needed depending on your preference on sodium. The broth is boiling already, so this means it's time to put our noodles in. Make sure you have rinsed your noodles with cold water, just rinsing them before putting them in the broth. As you can see, just put them in there. You're gonna leave it on high heat because you want to make sure everything gets, your noodles get soaked in, they absorb the broth, and they can cook completely. This might take a few minutes. We're gonna wait until most of the broth, as you can see, is almost completely absorbed, or like there's only a little bit left before we bring back all the veggies and the meat. We combine everything so our dish can be almost ready. The noodles, as you can see, they're soft already, but we want to make sure they absorb majority or all the broth eventually. See, there's still some in there. I love using these noodles because, as you can see, the texture, they absorb broth and the flavor really well. They're really great noodles to cook with. Okay, as you can see, most of the broth has been soaked. I'm gonna add the meat again. And lastly, the veggies. And we're gonna combine everything. Try your best to combine them. This is why it's a great use for a wok, because it's large. That's why if you're not using a wok, make sure you use a very large pan that can be deep or more wider in size. And we're almost done. We're just gonna integrate all the ingredients completely. Then we're gonna turn off the heat. That's why I'm using some tongs, because it's easier to mix everything together than a spatula. Well, our dish is done. I'm gonna turn off the heat. Everything's completely combined. Noodles are cooked. I turn off the heat and I'm adding the green onion, the ends of the green onion just to serve. And we're done, ready to serve and try this dish. Well, our dish is ready. It's time for my favorite part of the recipe, which is trying it out. This smells delicious. Look at the combination of colors and flavors. Let's try this out. That is yummy. Time this. Our first. Or this is